Hello and welcome to the Ukrainian Toronto Television podcast. I'm Mark Kaplan.
And I'm Melania Podolyak.
And we are back to talk about Donald Trump allegedly receiving money from Putin's friends. Ron DeSantis, one of the contenders in the GOP presidential primaries, siding with Russia. We will also talk about AOC and Progressive Caucus position on the Russian war in Ukraine and how Ukrainians feel about the United States.
And before we begin, we like to tell you a little disclaimer. So everything that we will be talking about here is purely perspective of two Ukrainians. We have a lot of experience working in Ukrainian politics, NGOs, and media. And of course, we are not here to explain to, foreigners their policy. However, we would think, that would be interesting for you to know our perspective, since all of this is relating to Ukraine, Russia, and war in Ukraine, so far.
Yeah, and let's get back to our news. And our first big news, which came somehow under the radar in American media, it's about Trump. And Trump made a little bit of news lately. But this one, for me, is much more important. Federal investigators examined Trump media for possible money laundering. And it is somehow, surprise, surprise, related to Russia. One second. Towards the end of last year, federal prosecutors started examining two loans totaling $8 million wired to Trump media through the Caribbean, sketchy, from two obscure entities that both appear to be controlled in part by the relation of an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump media needed a bridge loan to keep the company afloat, but it struggled to get financing until DVAC's chief executive Patrick Orlando sourced $2 million loan wired from Paxum Bank registered in Dominica, according to the wire transfer receipt reviewed by The Guardian. So there was other firm which wired $6 million and appeared to be related to the same man. And this man, surprise, surprise, is the nephew Anton Postolnikov, who appears to be in relation of Putin ally Alexander Smirnov, who was first deputy minister of justice of Russia until 2014, and he served in the office of Russian president, which is very sneaky.
Yeah. I mean, come on, we all know that owning a media is always a matter of investments, right? But it's always it just happens so that big media are not always owned by the nicest people on the planet. So is life. However, this is a bit too on the nose, don't you think? Literal deputy minister of justice of Russia. I mean, Russia and Ministry of Justice kind of sounds like a joke in one sentence. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And the other Guardian article about this told that they tried to wire this money back when they found out that it is sketchy after audit. And they told that this was like a surprise, but there was an email from Don Jr. Who approved this loan. So, Melania, I have a question for you. Did you ever in your life accidentally took a loan from Putin?
No, I have not accidentally. I mean, I love the fact that, I can imagine how difficult it is to give up like $8 million. I have never seen I can't even imagine what $8 million is. And for a media company that, again, I cannot stress this enough. It's financially, it's not a good business to own. Media's, it's always looking for more financing. But no, I have never by accident had a possibility to say, oops, well, I guess we just received $8 million from this benefactor that we don't know nothing about. And oops, he's Russian. What should we do? And never have I had President's son go, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. We can keep it. This is not a problem. This is not a national security matter. We're not a very big influential media. I'm not President's son.
Yeah.
Right? It's perfect. And the situation is perfectly healthy. I mean, this is something that has been overlooked dramatically, I think, is that people abroad like to make jokes about how Russia is pathetic, how Russia's losing on the battlefield, which is a completely different story, only partially true and very, difficult to understand. What Russia has been ridiculously good at is buying up assets, media assets, to be honest. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest British tabloids and British newspapers are owned by either Russians or people of Russian descent. So they have this long-standing tradition of buying up or investing in these influential media platforms. So this is not, this is not terribly surprising. However, this is a bit different. This is not a Russian businessman owning a newspaper or something.
Yeah,
this is
a
actual
loan from some sketchy Caribbean offshore. It was, by the way, it was 2/3 of all the cash the Trump media had.
Yes, they had like 12 or 13 million dollars in their bank accounts, and they received 8 from Russians, and not just from some Russians, just literally a person from Putin's very close circle. And funny thing about loans, what's the funniest thing about loans, Mark?
You can
dangle them over somebody's head and be like, yes, look at all this money we gave you.
Yeah, and we can only speculate regarding whether there were strings attached or other stuff. I mean, I can imagine the situation when you are just so desperate, you're just taking money. Someone told you someone can give you money from the Caribbean bank or something like that, and you're taking this money and then find out, oh my God, this was Russian money. But then there is also a position of a politician who received this money, and this position is kind of weird, don't you think?
Well, you could say that is in some countries taken money from different actors from different countries is frowned upon, one could say. Furthermore, the reason why I'm telling you about the dangling of the loan is that Trump family, especially Donald Trump, are not known for, I'm trying to find a diplomatic way of saying it. They're not great with, finances. They're not great at managing money. Trump has lost a lot of money during his career. So it's this thing that, I think it's his weak spot, and I'm not saying anything. This is just speculation, me being, a person on the internet. But if I was a foreign government looking to undermine national security of a country that I consider to be an adversary, I would try to find a weak spot of a certain person I'd like to influence. For example, bad financial decisions. And I would use that to kind of push through my agenda. So it's a very interesting story. Sadly, as you have said, overlooked in this kind of everlasting stream of news in America. But I think nevertheless, very, very important.
Yeah. And right after, I guess, or before this news came to see the light, we had Donald Trump making one of the most ridiculous international relations related speech, and I'm going to show it now.
At home, the State Department, the defense bureaucracy, the intelligence services, and all of the rest need to be completely overhauled and reconstituted to fire the deep staters and put America first. We have to put America first. Finally, we have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves and some of the horrible USA-hating people that represent us at home.
So, first reaction, dude, who the fuck, set up the lights for this video?
Listen,
those guys must have hated him. This is the most...
Listen, we all know and have for a long time appreciated the amount of orangeness and everything present in every single, video or photo material that Trump is involved in. But Mark, are you really surprised by any of these statements?
You don't have to say this, right? You don't have to say that.
Oh, no. Listen here. again, me being a person, yes, he doesn't have to say things. He should have used this logic to a lot of things he has said before.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, you can be against the assistance to Ukraine, say that those are the billions which could be spent for borders or something. You could be, I don't know, you could say anything. But when you are the presidential nominee or wannabe nominee, sorry, you don't say that Russia is not the threat. Our government is the threat. Like, you don't say the American government is a bigger threat than Russia, which actually says, which like Putin is just recently had been issued an arrest order from the International Court on human I don't
International
remember.
Criminal Court.
Yeah, International Criminal Court, and Russia threatens to nuke all the world for nothing, and they're just constantly talking about nuking the world for nothing, and you're just saying here that your government is worse. I mean, dude.
Yes, well, I agree with you completely because, I'm me and you're you. And obviously, comparing your own democratically elected government, which represents the will of your people, to the murderous fascist Nazi regime that kills civilians in a sovereign neighboring country, is completely ludicrous. However, we have to come back to certain events, of the previous years where, his agenda and the agenda of some of his very passionate followers is that, those were not real elections and those were not, not a democratic elected government. Therefore, he, in his mind, can compare these things. I'm not saying he should or it's correct or anything. I think it's insanity that he's allowed to do that. And that's very dangerous. But this is the line he has been holding on for years now. And we often talk about corruption. We've mentioned it today, like Russian money, which is, a legit thing to say. But then maybe I'm just naive. Maybe you'll correct me on this. But sometimes it seems that the only reason he says these horrible, horrible things is that that's the world he lives in, which is not good and is not an excuse. It's sad and scary that the person is so removed from the reality. And potential, possible maybe president again. So it's bad that these people are so removed from reality, but this is not new, is it really? It's outrageous, but it's not new.
But he represents, and let's be honest, he represents about maybe a third of American public, maybe a little bit less.
A lot of people.
Tens of millions of people. We know them personally who voted for him, who are rooting for them. Are they okay? Do they really think that Russia and what it represents and Russian threat is not as big?
You see, because we have to try. Again, we don't have to do it, but it's an exercise I like to do. Just imagine you've seen nothing else. Imagine living in that. I often talk about this phenomenon in America. It has nothing to do with Trump. But it's young people who are nostalgic for Soviet Union that were born in 2001 and who say they love communism and socialism, in a worst kind of, its worst possible form. And the reason why they say this is because that's what they think it is. They've never witnessed it. They've never felt it. They've never lived in it. And it's kind of insane that they're, nostalgic. How can you be nostalgic for something you've never seen? And I think the same logic applies to the people who support Trump and who believe these crazy ideas. In their minds where they live, they've never seen war. They've never seen Russia, actually. Their only idea of Russia stems from Hollywood, virtually. And, in Hollywood, Russia has always been this, very... yes, a villain, but very stylish, very, the whole thing with this game called Atomic Heart, where people were fascinated with this Soviet aesthetic, right? So in their minds, it's a powerful country. And for a lot of them, it only makes sense, being friends and partners with this super, big. And then they have divided the world into these spheres of influence virtually. And to them, yes, the biggest threat are, the other party that threatens to, in their mind, threatens to kind of disrupt their way of living. So, I mean, this is sad and it bothers me. And it just shows that, I mean, education failed us worldwide, to be honest. But, and I don't even know where to begin. If I were to find a solution for this problem, I don't think I would be able to.
Yeah. And that's horrible. And by the way, we were talking about the other Donald Trump statement about how he would solve the problem with the war, with Russian war in Ukraine, where he would just give some Ukrainian territories away to Russia. And the international politics, the world order, those things, they are hard to comprehend for lots of people. And if you're not following it, the logical, you don't make this logic of like, yeah, you can handle other country, you can like, how do you say it?
They're not real to you. They're not real.
Yeah.
Like as Ukrainians, as a bunch of people, like 30 million, they have never seen us. They've never been here. We're somewhere far away, so it doesn't matter.
And even without that, like the U.S. interest part, right? You can handle other countries, some other countries' territory. You don't give a fuck. But next, this country wants other territory, another country wants other territory. You don't think about it in years and years. You don't think about like whether it will actually do what you are afraid of, which is luring United States into open conflict with someone, like with China over Taiwan or with Russia over Poland. These things, they are consequential and they will touch everyone, every person on the earth, like with inflation because of this war, like economically instantly, and then they will affect everyone's life. And if you are not, like, people don't actually... people maybe don't think about it, but all this prosperity you had after World War II, all these things, fancy things, all this economic development you had, all these roads and trains and stuff you had because there was a world order in which it was like the things Russia did were not possible, or when they happened, they had the answer. And now... and if the world would be in constant wars like this one, because this is the biggest war since World War II. It's not just like Vietnam or Iraq. It's nothing like this. This is the full-scale World War II style war. If it was all over the world, like you would be poor, you would be struggling, and you would be probably thinking about when will you be enlisted to the army and go into fight and die in some trenches. This is the thing.
Yeah. And bottom line, war sucks. I mean, it sucks. Indescribably, it sucks. It's romanticized a lot, but it sucks.
Yeah, and with that thought, we should transition to the other wannabe nominee of GOP in the presidential election, in the next presidential elections of the United States, Ron DeSantis.
We can't win, right? It's either that one or the other one.
Yeah. You have no options. So Ron DeSantis is having about 30% or 40% of ratings. He's sometimes above Trump in polls. So he's like one of the most probable candidates from the GOP, and it is like
tragic.
The thing we'll discuss next. Those things sound like really, really scary. And yeah, Tucker Carlson here. Look at who's here. And by the way, Ron DeSantis tried to avoid Ukraine question for a long time, but Tucker Carlson, he's fucking obsessed on it.
He loves talking about Ukraine.
Yeah.
Russia.
For some reason, he's so obsessed with Russia. He's so obsessed with he's always talking some bullshit about Ukraine, etc., etc. So he asked, and yeah, Ron DeSantis, he's on the Fox News all the time, and he has to answer Fox News inquiries. And so they asked him about Ukraine, and he had to speak out. And this is what he told. While the U.S. has many vital national interests, securing our borders, addressing the crisis of readiness within our military, achieving energy security and independence, and checking the economic, cultural, and military power of the Chinese Communist Party, by the way, becoming further entangled in territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. The Biden administration's virtual blank check funding of this conflict for as long as it takes without any defined objectives or accountability distracts from our country's most present charges. Wow. A lot to
a lot to unpack here. Number one, I love the freaking. I think we were over this with everybody, both Democrats and Republicans. I love how they call it territorial dispute. Okay, I have issues with them calling it conflict because we know the word conflict is triggering for a lot of Ukrainians. But this is a whole other level because territorial dispute assumes that there is, no clear position on who the territory belongs to. I'm sorry, Mr. DeSantis, but it seems to me that 30 years ago, everybody all over the place has decided that those are Ukrainian national borders. So there is no such thing as territorial freaking dispute. Nobody's disputing shit. And this is, and I'm scared because, as you have said, Mark, this is possible Republican nominee for the position of the president of the United States. And dear God, if the president of the United States does not understand what territorial dispute means, oh my God, this is worse than it sounds, by the way. This is way worse because it means that he knows nothing about the origins of this conflict, which means he's prone to making even more strategic mistakes concerning Russia. And this is freaky.
Yeah, like the territorial dispute is probably the most offensive here, but also blank check. Like he virtually repeats what the most notorious Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene are saying. There is no actual blank check. If there was a blank check, we would win already, and it would be good. I mean,
we're getting like nickels. In comparison that you mentioned Afghanistan. In comparison, that's nothing. But also distracts from our country's most pressing challenges. Does anybody have a more pressing challenge than possibility of a Russian nuclear strike anywhere in the world? I'm sorry. I know that there are potholes and problems and healthcare and education and abortions. All of that very important and very important internal discussion in American politics that you and me have no say in because we don't
Absolutely.
live there. But we have a very pressing challenge of a crazy person in Russia sitting on top of a nuclear button, and he's talking about it all the time. And I do not know how that is not obvious that this is a very pressing challenge.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, and if you're like an American and thinking like Trump or DeSantis, like he should just handle them this land and handle him this land, do what he wants because he has a nuclear button, etc., and it will be fine, and like we will define. It's just like you have to handle him what he thinks he is his. But then, do you think if like nuclear blackmail works once, then Putin will be just like in 2 or 3 years will be just like, yeah, like I'm okay with everything. I don't want anything. I won't use nuclear blackmail again to get something even bigger than Ukraine, because you don't know. Maybe Trump will be president and Putin will be like, okay, I'll attack Poland because he was like he or I don't know, Lithuania, Estonia, and because Trump was saying that he will handle him land if he wants so, right? And then those are NATO countries, and some NATO countries will go to war. And do you think it is just like has no consequences at all? Like,
yeah, remember?
Does it sound like territorial dispute to you?
Yeah, remember there was this one guy in Germany who was like, "We're gonna divide Poland, and I'm gonna get a part of Poland and stop."
Yeah, nothing else.
Remember that guy? Remember that guy?
I just want a part of Czechoslovakia, right? And
a little tiny
I'll
little
be fine.
part.
Yeah.
And I'll stop. I swear to God, I'll stop.
Yeah.
This doesn't work. And again, I don't know if this is. You see, I can never tell. Either it's corruption or illiteracy. I will never know, and we will never know.
I don't actually think that in case of Ron DeSantis, it is a corruption part, right? Because on Trump, we had some really sketchy relations with Russian money, etc. And we can speculate however we want. We don't know anything about that in regards to Ron DeSantis. But Ron DeSantis wants this Trump electorate, right? He wants those Fox News viewers, and he wants those Tucker Carlson viewers. And when Tucker Carlson asks a question about Ukraine, you have to answer what Tucker Carlson wants to hear and what Tucker Carlson is spreading. And Tucker Carlson here is spreading the most outright Russian bullshit. He tells Fox News viewers that Zelensky is a dictator, that he is like Lenin or something.
As a Ukrainian, I feel ridiculously oppressed by the Zelensky regime. Oh my God, no.
Yeah, if you like, you couldn't tell otherwise, right? If you would be a dictator.
You see, but then it's very oh my God, it's very difficult, by the way, to distinguish some of these things, and we will get into it, me and you, one day. We should talk about this definitely. The reason I'm always talking about, like corruption, it's not necessarily, monetary corruption. It can be moral corruption. There has been this ridiculous in meaning of fascinating. Inquiry. I think it was investigation made by Washington Post, as far as I'm concerned, about the fact that Tucker Carlson did not always want to say things he said on air, and it's with these things you can, because there have been reports of him outright refusing to say certain things on air, but then saying them anyway, and it's the thing. I never know if they actually believe what they say. It's so difficult. And same goes for this. I mean, it doesn't make it better, by the way. Neither corruption nor illiteracy, makes it better. It just overall sucks, because territorial dispute, my God, so many dead people, Jesus.
And yeah, the most strange part of this is that American people, they do not really support it. Like, if you ask, like when polls ask Americans, they are like, I found some polls on the Ukraine support and like the reaction of Biden, the support of Biden's policy in regards to Ukraine. So the poll from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs found that most Americans still support aiding Ukraine, 65% support sending weapons, 66% support economic aid, 75% support increasing sanctions on Russia. This is huge. And I mean, if you want to be elected, probably Fox News, probably Tucker Carlson viewers are not the core audience here, because I understand it could be like, we know among Democrats, there are also people who don't support sending weapons to Ukraine. Maybe that's like 50% of Republicans. So you're just alienating both Trump and DeSantis, alienating half of their electorate. And that's
it's not just that survey. Every survey, I was looking at Pew Center research, and like 4 in 10 U.S. citizens support Ukraine, which is like 43%. That's so many people, and that number has not changed since like May 2022. So this has been stable. It has neither risen, which is natural, but it hasn't fallen down. It's obvious that, Americans like Ukrainians and Ukrainians like Americans.
And Americans don't like Russia. This is an important thing. Americans don't like Russia. That's the thing we were talking about Americans have the wrong view of Russia. It is there, but there's like only there was I don't remember that, but it was only like 9% of pro-Russian Americans on the recent
well, because nobody likes bullies. Nobody likes bullies. Nobody likes murderers.
Nobody likes them. Yeah, and Ukrainians are fighting, and Ukrainians are winning, and it is an important thing, because Ukrainians are acting as if America was attacked. Americans would act the same, right? Ukrainians are on the same side. They are a democratic country. Yes, we struggle with some corruption and some democracy stuff, but we are still as America struggles as well, by the way, and neither Republicans or Democrats will deny that. We struggle with some justice, etc. We are a developing country. We are 10 times. We had 10 times less time to develop than America or most of other.
Yeah, America
countries.
had like what 56 presidents, if I'm concerned.
Yeah, we had
like,
five.
Five, yeah.
How many presidents?
How many do we have?
Like a lot. Be more than Russia, right?
Oh yeah, Russia only had two. It's fine. I mean, three if you count Medvedev. But why the hell?
Oh yeah, is he alive?
Yeah, no. He says stuff online too. He's like, he should get on Truth Social. By the way, it's.
By the
he
way,
would
great.
fit in perfectly.
Yeah, great social media. We should get there too. But anyway, like Ukrainians are so much similar to Americans in lots of stuff. In terms of their, by the way, conservatism. In terms of their struggle for freedom, which Americans had for a long time and fought for it notoriously. There were like wars America fought against an empire.
Diversity.
Right?
Diversity. Ukraine is very diverse. I mean, this is the funniest thing. And I think this is what Americans have discovered in this war, and what was so important for these surveys as well, is that apparently Ukrainians are much closer to Americans than to Russians, which for years has been the overwhelming narrative, like, oh my God, Ukrainians and Russian are the same people, the same nation, same culture, blah, blah, which is a complete bullshit. But the point is that, as a matter of fact, Ukrainians and Americans are much more alike than Ukrainians and Russians.
Yeah, absolutely. And like culturally as well. I was raised on American culture in much more like more than I was raised in Russian culture. I watched I watched American movies, series. I listened to American music. I watched American elections, etc., etc. Much more than Russian stuff, and more Ukrainians know. Like Ukrainians probably know more about America than about Russia, and it's true, by the way.
Definitely.
Yeah, and Ukrainians really like America, and they like Americans, and they perceive Americans as their bros. Yeah.
We were preparing for this podcast yesterday, and we have came to this weird realization that I don't think there has been an event so significant in Ukrainian recent history than President of the United States coming to Ukraine. And I think, Mark, you agreed with me. And it didn't have to be Biden, by the way. It could be anybody else.
Be Trump as well. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It could be anybody else. But the fact that, an American president came to Ukraine, especially in this time, was so significant. I don't think anybody could ever understand. I don't think even we understand it yet.
Yeah, and it's all about how people were cheering his. You went to Kramatorsk, which is right on the front lines, like
30 kilometers away from Bakhmut, from the very front line. I have met soldiers who just came from the trenches who were like, oh my God, Biden has come to Ukraine. And that was like 2 weeks after he left. And they were like, oh my God, have you seen, this is so exciting. I was like, guys, you literally just came from an actual war. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, this is very important.
Yeah. And we always we always were good in terms of deals with America. We actually gave up our nukes to America.
And this is, again, something that people can say however much they want. But the only reason why Ukraine has always been very open to these kind of deals, Budapest Memorandum, all of these Ukrainian giving up our strategic aviation, was because America was there to support us. This is something that cannot be. And, at this point, I think somebody will cut out this segment of our podcast, Mark, and be like, oh, look at them. They're talking because America is funding them. And yeah, it's not that, actually. It's not. We have always been pals. We have always been partners. I think even in our darkest times when Yanukovych was president, disclaimer, it was a proxy president of Russian Federation, very sketchy, had to leave the country in 2014 because revolution. So, and yeah, he should be in jail. Even then, I think there hasn't been. I mean, there is no anti-American sentiment in Ukraine except for maybe, these really fringe groups like pro-Russian, very obscure kind of that crowd. I mean, overall, the perception of America is very positive in Ukraine.
Yeah, and we also hope, like all the time, hope that America will be by our side. Not because it's like funding or something like that, but because we knew that there's a big bro. Sorry, that's true, right? That there is a big bro who stands for democracy, for what we are
struggling for,
money. For the values which we are fighting for. There's a big bro who's with us when we struggle, who's with us when we even like do the wrong choices, and like we do stuff in exchange. I found this photo, and in terms of what we've done, I found this photo. So in 2004, I guess, or 5, when Barack Obama was still the senator, he came to oversee the destruction of Ukrainian armaments. Like those are the shells which Ukraine needs right now so much.
badly.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm don't want to be ignorant that the other dude is also a senator from GOP, but I don't remember his name. But this is what happened. This is this is in Donetsk, and they are dismantling Ukrainian artillery, and we gave up so much of it because of a lot of reasons.
We gave up jets that we really need now. We gave up nukes. It's a completely different story, but we did. Never mind. Okay, we can even skip that.
Because there was a thing about disarmament of post-Soviet.
Yes. And sure. We wouldn't bomb Moscow with nukes if we have them now. I mean, this changes little to nothing. But we gave up a lot of smaller things that were no threat to the civilized world that we could have, but we did this because this is what pals do.
Yeah, they asked us and we were like, okay, no problem. We'll give up.
We're not whining.
We're not
shitting on people.
Otherwise, it could be sold. It could be sold to some African countries or something like that. It could be like stuff happened with armament shipments from Ukraine. Problems. There were lots of problems, and that's why we stopped that.
But that's what friends do. This is partnership.
This is
what we agreed on. We're not saying, we shouldn't have done this. We should have done this because this is what our partners asked us, and because we're reliable partners and we do stuff that we're asked. It's just now it's time to, kind of look back at that. But then again, you need to really want to know these things to know them. And I'm not sure the people we have spoken about so far really know.
Yeah, and that's why it hurts. Because for all of Ukrainians are woke because they don't like Trump or something. Ukrainians are frightened by Trump, and they're hurt by things that those guys said.
It's a very good word that you've used. They are hurt. Yes, I feel personally hurt by certain things that certain American presidents have said about Ukraine in the past past decade, actually. Not only Trump. This hurts. This touches the deepest part of my very Ukrainian soul, being like, come on, guys. Come on. We had a deal. But I think it's going to be fine as long as,
Yeah, and we also wanted to put some shit on the ventilator for the other side, for the sake of a balance. Yeah.
So Ukrainian Toronto Television is a very balanced, unbiased organization.
Yeah, and we don't care if you're left or right. We will.
Yeah, Republican or Democrat. We will shit on you, no matter your partisanship. Which is, I think is fair. So
which is good. Which is good. We should do that a lot. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other guys from the Progressive Caucus, and it happened a while ago, 4 months ago. They wrote a letter. On their suggestion.
Sneakily wrote a letter. This letter was not supposed to be public. They addressed it to the president. Sneakily wrote a letter.
And it's a good and a bad thing because thanks for not voicing it out loud. But again, what they said
it became public, and then they withdrew it.
Yeah, so they withdrew it.
Keep that in mind, by the way. So it was not supposed to be public, then it happened public, and then they withdrew it.
And their position in this letter was actually a lot in a lot of things similar to what DeSantis said. Like it's not like and what Trump said. Like it's not a war. It's we
so you know, Republicans and Democrats, some of them agree on some things that they wouldn't usually. You know, it's a horseshoe go in a circle theory.
Like and then they.
No, it is the horseshoe theory. You know that the fringes often, you know, are very similar. Which is if I was AOC, I would be very concerned. You know.
And they it's weird. They asked Biden to not like be this warmongering eagle, as they call him from both of the sides, but to solve this problem diplomatically and try to solve this problem diplomatically. They did not go into the details on how do they see this diplomacy work out.
Of course, they didn't.
But it's just a statement of dissatisfaction with sending weapons to Ukraine, because in their understanding, weapons cannot solve things. And I don't know, Manya,
and that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
You've been close to the front lines recently.
Yes.
Would diplomacy solve your problem on this front line? Or maybe it would be some rockets or shells or AK-47 something.
Let me tell you this. So when you lie in bed in the city of Kramatorsk and you stay in the city of Kramatorsk for a whole 24 hours, and during that entire time, S-300 rockets are literally falling like a block away from you, and you lay there in your bed thinking like, well, this one did not fall on my house, which is nice. And there's no guarantee, by the way. Diplomacy is the kind of, it's a bad joke. That's what it is. When you're there, it's a sick and it's a bad joke, because actual weapons solve the problem. Did the assault on Kyiv, was it stopped by diplomacy, by talking nicely, or was it by killing everybody who tried to occupy Kyiv?
There was diplomacy. There were like really desperate attempts by Ukrainian government to talk to Russians for like 2 months, I guess, in a row. They were having this.
They tried to.
Yeah, with zero results.
But at the end, what liberated Kherson? Was it the civilized world talking to Putin? Was it the everlasting calls from France, from Macron to Putin? Or was it by the force of Ukrainian armed forces who literally had to kick Russians out of Kherson? Because I'm mentioning Kherson because it was a very, very celebrated victory on Ukrainian part. And it was a very important ideological loss for Russians, because, I mean, they did do the stupid referendum there and kind of already proclaimed it to be part of Russia, and then they had to withdraw. But the only good, achievable, viable results that Ukraine has achieved in this war was through military victory achieved by Western weapons, and not only Western, but also Western ones. And you have to be absolutely and completely blind not to know, not just to know, because I think they know. They don't want to acknowledge it, because war is bad. Weapons are dangerous. This is kind of this mantra. It exists in people's brains, but those people know nothing of war usually. So this makes no sense. If it was for diplomacy, I'm not sure Ukraine would be Kyiv would be standing, as it is now, because it does nothing. The only thing you can actually do is help Ukraine become militarily stronger and prevalent on the battlefields. But again, I believe this is for 90% part of just not knowing anything about anything. And I'm sorry I'm being so drastic about this. And it sounds mean, and I sound very, like selfish and above all this. But the problem is that Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Barbara Lee, most likely know nothing about the struggle we're dealing with now. I mean, I'm not saying they should go to Kramatorsk like I did. They shouldn't, because they're representatives of a different country. But if they have opinions on foreign policy, they should A, read up on it. B, they can come visit. I mean, Biden was here, right? Come and see. come and talk to the people. There, especially AOC, she's known for representing her community because she talks to them a lot and they know each other. She should come and see and talk. And then after seeing, the occupied territories of Ukraine, talking to the survivors, then she can draft a letter to the President Biden. Maybe that's a thing that is lacking. Maybe these people should just come here and talk and figure it out. I can't imagine another scenario, because this, again, diplomacy, as if there is a magic word like abracadabra that suddenly makes everybody a good boy. No, there's no such thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Russia wants to do some bad stuff and it doesn't care about, Putin doesn't care about sanctions, doesn't care about isolation, etc., etc. Like, what levers do you have? If you don't have levers, there couldn't be a diplomacy. I mean, we all had like relationships with people. If you don't have any lever on them and they want to do some stuff, it won't, like, talking won't work. If you, I don't know, don't believe this war is real, if you don't believe that Russia is evil, that if you think these things can be solved by diplomacy, or if you think that it is a territorial dispute which can be solved by giving some territories to the nuclear blackmailing evil country, come to Ukraine, come visit it, go walk on the liberated cities, talk to the people, go to the front lines and check it out. And maybe you will find, I don't know, some new thoughts on it. Maybe you can find like some revelations you got, which we have, which you, Melania, had when you visited Kramatorsk. And welcome to Ukraine. It's actually relatively safe in Kyiv, for example. You can come, there are nice hotels, great restaurants, everything is working. People are trying to make money and trying to have fun while horrible stuff happen. Come to Ukraine, visit Ukraine, see for yourself, and make up your mind. Thank you very much. It was Ukrainian Journal and Television podcast. Melania Podolyak,
Mark Kaplan, and please leave your satisfactory and dissatisfactory comments under this video so we
absolutely
know. So we know where we fucked up.
And donate to us, to our Patreon, and to Ukrainian army. And I don't know, press like, subscribe, and we'll be back with more podcasts in a week.
Nearest future, yeah.
Bye.
Bye.